At the beginning of this year, I embarked on a little practice side quest. I set out to learn and record every piece in the second book of guitar lessons by Julio Sagreras, each in 15 minutes or less. I did not score 100% on the 15-minute thing, but I still got to the finish line. If you've been following me for at least the past few months, you've probably seen me posting these every couple days. So what's the deal with this book? Julio Salvador Sagreras was a guitarist, composer, and pedagogue from Buenos Aires. He lived from 1879 to 1942. He was something of a virtuoso. He was taught the guitar from a very young age by his parents, both of whom were guitarists. He performed in concerts. He published around 100 compositions. He became a professor of guitar at 20 years old. At 26, he opened his own guitar academy, and he would continue to teach guitar for decades. Today, he is most known for his instructional books that he published later in life, based on his 40-some-odd years of teaching. They're a series of 6 books that progress in difficulty. There isn't a lot of lengthy discussion in them. They're mostly made up of short pieces with some instructional goal, many of which have a brief paragraph or two preceding them explaining said goals. But the pieces themselves are extremely well annotated. They include detailed fingerings for both hands, as well as markings for rest strokes and clever techniques like delayed slurs. And the pieces are fun. Most of them are really good. Some of them are kind of lame, but even the lame ones are instructive. Whenever somebody asks me for a recommendation for a good beginner guitar book for classical guitar, I always tell them Solo Guitar Playing by Frederick Node and the Sagreras books. I usually tell my students to buy them. Mel Bay sells them in a split anthology. Books 1 through 3 are in one volume and 4 through 6 are in another. Make sure you buy the spiral-bound version because this sucks. Also, I guess I better mention, this is not a paid advertisement. This is a genuine recommendation. So anyway, I just finished learning the entirety of Book 2. It contains 44 lessons. I wanted to learn each lesson in the book in 15 minutes or less, but I started to miss that mark more and more as I got past the halfway point, only because the music gets more involved as you go. So 15 minutes turned into like 30 tops, but who's keeping track? Why did I do this? I think trying to learn and perform something really fast is a good exercise. It forces you to focus, make assessments, and attack issues head on. It was good sight reading practice. And I like to scout around for pieces that my students can learn that are a little off the beaten path. Now, I want to be clear, when I talk about learning all of these pieces with a tight time constraint, I'm not trying to brag about my abilities or inflate my own ego or anything. My intent is for this to be educational. If you're watching this, I expect that you fall somewhere on a spectrum. If you're on one end, you have way more experience than I do, and you think that learning each lesson in this book in 15 minutes or less is a perfectly reasonable and achievable thing. If you're on the other end, doing such a thing is unbelievably impressive, and you cannot begin to fathom how someone could do it, or you're somewhere in between. In any case, I'm going to give you some insight into how I was able to do this, the requisite skills, and how I'm thinking and processing all of it. First and foremost, sight reading. There's a common misconception that sight reading and reading music, period, are the same thing. That is very much not the case. Sight reading, as in looking at a page of music and playing it in time at first sight, is a high-level application of reading music. It's a skill that first requires you to be able to read music comfortably and translate it to your instrument. The mechanics of reading music are pretty easy to understand. Getting good at it takes time. The only way to get good at it is to do it. A lot. If you spent a month reading music and playing from it a little bit every day, you'd be amazed how far you can get. Here are some resources. Sight reading is really more of an advanced skill, and it's one that requires designated practice. But you can start practicing it at any point in your development. The earlier the better. When I'm sight reading, I'm not reciting note names in my head. I can stop and name them if I need to, but it's too much information for the real-time processing to handle. It's more like I see notes and my fingers go there, and I can hear the notes I'm about to play in my mind's ear before I play them. It's kind of like reading words. You're not identifying every letter, you're not sounding out every word, you just see it and you say it. Which brings me to another component in all of this, aural skills. Being able to perceive, recognize, and understand different musical structures in context by ear. Intervals, chord qualities, tonal centers, melodic contour, whatever else. Having developed ears is invaluable in just about any musical situation. When sight reading, it helps you corroborate what you're seeing on the page as you're playing it. If you want to practice ear training on your own, a good free resource is musictheory.net. Again, no affiliation. It has flashcard type exercises for note identification, intervals, chords, and scales. You can customize the answer pools to make it more or less difficult as needed. I took 6 semesters of aural skills in college. It was pretty intense. I wish I took it more seriously back then. But absent that opportunity, websites like this are your next best option. Transcribing songs is good practice too. Third component, theory. If you've been following me since the beginning of my internet guitar teaching, you know that I'm a real theory geek. Anyone who says theory is a waste of time and makes you a worse musician is either just projecting their own insecurities, or they haven't learned enough to make the necessary connections and they gave up on trying to understand too early. The lesson that took me quite a while to learn is that any concept of music theory can only hold value if it can be corroborated by what you hear. A basic example would be a perfect authentic cadence. This is when the dominant chord, or the 5 chord, moves to the 1 chord at the end of a musical phrase. Both chords are in root position, and the highest voice in the 1 chord is its root. That definition is a bit technical, and based on that alone, you would rightfully say, so what? But if I told you that the 5 chord is a moment of tension that then resolves to the 1 chord, and that the intended effect is a sense of finality, and then I showed you what it sounds like, you might then think, oh yeah, I've heard that sound before in many places. And then you might start to more readily recognize it in the wild when you're listening to music, or perhaps when you're sight reading. If you can recognize musical structures in real time as you're reading, that helps you understand what the music is doing, how the phrases are unfolding, which is corroborated against what you're hearing, and where your fingers are going. And when all of these corners of musical understanding are coming together, and working off one another in real time, not through calculation, but through developed intuition, you find yourself able to learn new music very quickly. All of this takes a long time to develop. And like I said in a recent video, I really believe anyone can do it. You just have to stay on the path and enjoy the journey. So much of the joy of making music is in the process, you know? Anyway, I hope this was insightful. Thanks for watching, and happy practicing.